Come inside and join me as we dissolve the boundaries of sound and fiction. Hello again. I see you've come back. Well, I guess when we have a reason to, we always come back, don't we? Some of the stories on this show are kind of like that. They just don't go away. They grow and expand into something else, something more. One of the first episodes of this show, titled The Guardian, strangely enough came to me as a dream. I ended up writing it, and that was one of the first stories I ever wrote. If you haven't listened to it, I highly encourage you to do so. It's about a painting with supernatural qualities that make its viewers act out of character. This story you're about to hear now details the origins of that painting. So follow me to 1700s France in episode 63 of Sound Fiction, Birth of a Guardian. In the darkness of night, the mad painter whispered something incessant to himself, in the hopes of calming his nerves and steadying his hand. From the shattered rooftop where he stood, a city of parasites and leeches below him pulsed. Driven to the edge of sanity by his experience in the art world, Jean Durand mixed oil and blood on his palette, with nothing but moonlight to illuminate his canvas. Upon it danced his brush, resulting in an unholy matrimony between him and the spirit world, the opening of a portal which could not be closed and would have tremendous impacts on the lives of many for centuries to come. Although there was no way for Jean to know this, he would not have cared. So all the same, he painted steadily, but viciously, his hand driven by spite and his mind fueled by anger. "12 years prior, in 1773, Jean Durand arrived in Paris to attend the Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture. Having showed much promise as a young painter, he was accepted to the prestigious institute on a full scholarship. Practically unheard of for a boy in the countryside, Jean's family and friends developed high hopes and expectations for his career in Paris. At the academy, he studied and practiced under his knowledgeable mentors. They admired his talent and unique style, along with his impressive ability to learn something new and somehow make it his own without even trying. After 5 years at the academy, he was accepted as an associate member and officially became eligible to showcase his work at the Paris Salon, a prestigious exhibition for artists all across Europe. In preparation for the event, John worked on a piece that he knew would catch eyes. Not only eyes, but hearts as well. He painted a portrait of a young woman, a beautiful young woman, undressing in the quarters of her abode. She gently slipped off her undergarments and revealed her breasts, while looking at the viewer seductively. Jean captured her expressions perfectly, portraying lust in a way which would make any man flustered from desire. He painted her body to accentuate certain areas sexually, without making the piece seem too pornographic. The subject was humble, attainable, and most importantly, willing. The combination of these things was sure to entice a crowd. And at the start of the Paris Salon, that's exactly what it did. Within the first week, people began to take notice. Patrons gathered, mostly men, drawn to the allure of this beautiful woman's aura. Word soon spread, as artists and critics congregated around the painting to observe its uncanny appeal. Upon further inspection from those with a more keen eye, feelings toward the painting changed. Those who gazed upon it quickly felt uneasy, nervous, skeptical, and even upset. A hefty range of emotions was conjured by John's peculiar portrait, and only few could properly explain why. In reality, it wasn't the woman herself, but the subliminal details surrounding her which made onlookers feel so much. It wasn't her exposed body or her suggestive eye that made viewers excited. It was the slightly arched window and the iron grille sitting firmly upon it, the rope belt curled neatly on her bedside table, the white cloth laying on her bed with a hole just big enough for a face, and the small piece of wood hanging from the wall leading to something off frame. Whether people realized it or not, she was a nun, and this changed everything about John's spectacular painting. Viewers experienced a tantalizing sensation that what they felt was dirty and wrong, hence the ensuing skepticism and aggravation from those who knew better. Despite this, it only made the male spectators even more excited and eager for the thing that they should not want. Portraying a woman of faith in such a crude nature was highly disrespectful and blasphemous in public perception. John played a dangerous game, and his fellow artists couldn't help but respect him for it. This piece especially caught the eye of one Claude Antoine Boucher, an established artist who had commissioned works for countless wealthy clients and even for public offices like the city courthouse. Claude's career was the envy of any up-and-coming painter. Attracting his attention was a compliment in itself.
Who painted this portrait?
John stepped forward and nervously replied, I did.
I'd like to offer you 200 livres for it.
200 livres was an absurdly high amount to offer an unknown artist for a work on display. John struggled to find the words.
Fine, 250. But I'd like to take the piece home with me right now.
John was frozen in place, a million thoughts flying through his mind, but unable to speak. He looked around at the crowd of people witnessing this interaction. They stood there, wide-eyed and giddy, nodding with encouragement, as if to say, "What are you waiting for? Take the money." Deal. John stuck his hand out and shook Claude's firmly, excited to have made his first professional sale. The small crowd applauded lightly, happy to see a young artist emerge victorious. Claude took the painting down and used a tarp to cover it, as if concealing a secret. With the piece secure under his arm, he walked away briskly and without distraction. The crowd slowly dissipated, leaving John alone in his place, with nothing but the money in his pocket. Somehow, the 250 livres was much lighter than he had initially imagined, and just like the space where his painting once stood, John was cold and empty. After 2 more years of study, John decided it was finally time to exit the academy and begin full-time work as an artist. With a few larger commissions under his belt and a couple somewhat regular clients, John was able to move out on his own and begin a humble existence in the heart of Paris. He rented a shabby flat in the Latin Quarter on the top floor of a decaying building. It wasn't much, but it was enough to call home. Every day John painted, honing in on his craft and trying to figure out what made him special. In time, he learned that it was his ability to make the viewer feel something unexpected. He made them overcome with emotion through the stories he told within his work. It wasn't always about the subject, but the life they lived inside the painting, almost as if the frame was a window into another world. His style wasn't popular, but the effect it had on some was profound. Word of his work made its way to a wealthy banker in Faubourg Saint-Germain, an expensive district with extremely wealthy residents. John was commissioned by the banker to paint a portrait of his infant daughter. When he arrived at the banker's home, awe washed over John's face at the luxury of his dwelling. Fine art covered the walls and nestled itself into every crevice of the property. A feast for the eyes. Paintings, sculptures, and custom furniture existed everywhere to be admired. Over the next 3 weeks, John painted the banker's baby. He depicted her transition into a life of wealth and presented a future full of love and happiness. Although the baby was not his own, John felt as if she was while painting her, and loved her accordingly. When the portrait was finished, the banker and his wife were pleased beyond measure. She shed a tear at the sight of her beautiful baby girl, and he presented John with a bag of gold coins amounting to 480 livres. John thanked the couple immensely and packed his things. On the way out, he spotted a painting that caught his eye.
Oh, wow, oh la la,
John exclaimed.
Who painted that?
Aha, one of my favorites. This is an original Claude Antoine Boucher. A sexy painting, no? You see the arched windows? Part of the crucifix there on the wall? She's a...
None, yes, I know.
Ah, yes. A sneaky little delight, isn't it?
John stood silent, a calm anger slowly rising up through his body, for the painting in front of him was anything but original. John recognized it from the Paris salon because it was identical to the painting he displayed there just a few years prior. Not the exact same one, but a stroke-for-stroke remake by Claude Antoine Boucher, the man who bought the real original. Again, at a loss for words, John just stared at the painting. Though Claude did put some effort into it and added his own signature flair, John couldn't help but see his own work hanging from the wall, practically stolen from him by one man and sold off to another. For the banker, this portrait perfectly portrayed the corruption in his life, and John could tell that's exactly why he loved it so much. In a strange way, the piece actually belonged here, whether John approved of it or not.
Don't tell anyone, okay? Otherwise, the church will have me fired.
The period following was much more difficult for John in terms of his work. Commissions dried up, and it became harder to cover the costs of living through painting alone. To combat this, John resorted to acquiring a dealer. Although not an ideal move, it was one born of necessity. Working with a dealer was associated with lower-class art. It meant selling your work at a devalued price, but at the same time, it meant working consistently, and this was something John needed to do. He started working with a dealer named Michel Dupont, a business-savvy man who understood the industry very well. Desperate to return to independence and earn large private commissions, John painted non-stop to get his work and name out there. In the beginning, things were fine. Michel had John painting portraits for a growing market of middle-class collectors and landscapes for small businesses. The pay wasn't ideal, but it was enough. Michel could surely sense the desperation in John and constantly promised him bigger and better opportunities for his career. He would always say,
Stop worrying! The big clients are coming!
Or,
I'm getting your name out of there, Jean. The more you work, the more you will get.
So, that's exactly what John did. He worked and worked and worked. From sunup to sundown he painted, sometimes well into the night, with only the company of candlelight for comfort. These sweet little promises lost their charm after a while, and John began to lose faith in Michel. After 2 years of working with him, John developed an exit strategy. He approached the regular clients of Michel and offered to paint for them directly. Most refused, expressing their loyalty to Michel, but some agreed, and John sneakily poached them away for himself. When he learned of the exorbitant prices Michel charged them compared to what he was given for the work, anger soon filled his mind. It was hard to look Michel in the eye after discovering his scheme. John, along with many others, were being cheated out of their work with promises of fame and future success, all while Michel made extreme profits off the broken dreams of these struggling artists. John wanted to leave, but still, he needed the work. He felt trapped and unsure of what to do. Yearning for some sense of comfort, John was reminded of home. He hadn't been back in years, not since coming to Paris for his studies. He decided to surprise his parents with a visit, so he packed his things. John returned to his hometown of Camaillet after a long 5-day journey. He traveled by carriage for a few portions, by horseback for others, but on foot for most. He stayed at inns along the way and desperately yearned for one of his mother's home-cooked meals by the time he got home. When he finally arrived, beloved smiles and tight embraces greeted him at the door. The warmth of home never felt so great and necessary for the nearly broken man. At the table, he took a sip of warm potato stew, and never in his life did he taste something so good. John, his mother, and his father sat together all night in the kitchen, talking and drinking wine until the sun came up. John was so happy to be back that he almost wished that he had never left. The next day, John walked with his father around the town. He saw the familiar faces of the townsfolk and greeted them with happiness. They all asked about his life in Paris and what it was like to be a fancy artist in the world's greatest city. John replied to everyone meekly, saying that it wasn't so glamorous, but everyone just assumed that he was being modest. It seemed that the people in his hometown regarded him as some kind of big shot in the Paris art world. If only they knew the truth. The two men walked by the burned cathedral when John's father opened his mouth to speak. I know things in Paris may not be easy, but just know that we will always support you. Yes, I know, Father. Thank you, replied John. I just hope the money we have been sending has helped. Shocked by this, John stopped in place. Money? What money? John's father then explained that his agent, Michel, had reached out saying that John was struggling, that John was extremely talented, but needed money to promote his work and advance his career. Michel had sweet-talked and swindled John's parents into sending money every month to help promote John to wealthy collectors and clients. As soon as John heard this, he recognized Michel's scheme to milk his parents for even more money to pocket. Don't give him any more, okay? John said firmly. Okay, said his father. But there is no shame in asking for help, John. We love you. John looked at his father's frail body and bony fingers clenched into a fist by his mouth. Although it had been a long time since they last met, his father was noticeably weaker, much weaker. John was quickly reminded of the potato soup from the night before, how it did not have the usual chicken or hare meat his mother always included in the past. He wondered just how long they'd been sending money to Michel. They were not a wealthy family, and John grew curious as to how much healthier both of his parents would be if Michel had never entered the picture. Over the next few days, John took more notice of the not-so-subtle decay which had befallen his home. His mother was skinnier as well, and moved slowly, unlike her normal pace of life. Even the home itself was beginning to crumble and fall apart, a perfect physical representation of John's life as he knew it. In the kitchen, they sat for dinner one last time before John's departure early the next day. He talked, joked, and laughed with his parents, only to realize that this was the first time he had truly smiled in ages. His cheeks and eyes even felt sore from these rare expressions of happiness. The next day, John set out to make his way back to Paris, the air seemingly colder with every step he took further from home. The journey back gave him a lot of time to think about his life and his future as a painter. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, creating a fury which could no longer be contained. It started with Michel, for treating artists like John not as people, but as financial assets to be exploited for cash. Then it moved on to other artists, like Claude Antoine Boucher, who would rather take brilliant works and pass them off as his own, instead of championing other artists for their talent. Soon, this anger spread out toward the greater world and the extreme inequality that existed in it, onto people like the wealthy banker, whose furniture collection was worth more than some people would make in their entire lives. At a tavern, midway through his journey, John stopped to spend the night in a shared lodge. In the main hall, he sat silently, drinking a warm glass of wine, simmering in the hateful thoughts that filled his ill-tempered head. At a certain point, John could feel the sharp gaze of someone else nearby. He did not know where this gaze was coming from, but it was unmistakable. He looked around, and of the few other patrons in the room, none were paying Jean any attention. He then spotted the dark silhouette of a hooded figure just outside the front window. He could identify no discernible features, but knew, without doubt, that this person was peering directly at him. The figure moved out of the window and walked through the door. It was a tall, frightening man, wearing dark clothes and tapered hood which obscured his face. This unnerving character walked straight to John's table, pulled out the chair across from him, and sat down.
You are an angry man, no?
What? Why do you say this? Replied John.
Your mind, it is filled with anger, and you must let it out.
He lowered his hood to reveal a shockingly weathered face. John sat silent, searching for words that he could not find.
I don't know who you are, but I was sent here to find you and give you something.
He reached into his bag and pulled out a velvet pouch, which he placed gently on the table. Shook from his paralyzed state, John said, I don't know what you are trying to sell me, but I'm not interested.
The prophecy says that this item will change the world, but only by the hand of the angry and cheated.
Now irritated, John remarked, I don't know what you are trying to sell me, but I said I'm not interested.
It doesn't matter. I was given a holy sign that the angriest and most cheated of men would be here at this tavern tonight. This is for you. Take it to Paris.
The tall man put his hood back on and stood up. What is it?
Demon blood. Use it on the one you hate most, and the rest will be history.
He turned around and walked calmly out the door, leaving the tavern in an eerie state of pause. John sat fearful of the velvet pouch in front of him, which had a gravity to it that everyone in the room could feel. Looking around, the other patrons sat quietly and stared intensely at the velvet pouch, wondering curiously about what was inside. Upstairs in the lodge, John took the pouch out to examine its contents in further detail. Soft candlelight illuminated the dark room as John pulled out what appeared to be a small jar full of thick, dark blood. He held it to the light. It was red like blood, but backlit by flame, emitted a sheen which hinted at other colors, like purple, blue, and somehow even green. John was entranced by this substance, and what started as fear turned into immense fascination. Back in Paris, Jean continued his work painting, but had to confront Michel the very first chance he got. At Michel's gallery, Jean arrived with fists clenched from rage. Before he could open his mouth to speak, Michel beat him to the greeting.
Ah, Jean! How nice to see you! How was your visit home?
Don't talk to me like you care. Why have you been accepting money from my family? Telling them you need money to promote me? Michel flinched from shock, as if his secret had been revealed.
Oh, yes, that. Well, you know how this business works, Jean. You must know the richest people to sell them art. It's expensive to spend time around them. All of my artists pay me promotion fees. Either that or their families pay.
If you want money for that, you come to me, okay? Not my family. They don't have money for these things. Trying his best to calm Jean, Michel spoke calmly.
Listen, Jean, I understand your worry for your parents, but they also worry for you. That's why they help. They want you to succeed.
Jean's anger settled down from these tranquil words. Even though he knew Michel was full of lies, he had to admit that Michel always knew exactly what to say.
Besides, these promotion fees have really paid off. I got you a big job, huh?
Michel went on to discuss how the Duke of Noailles was looking for a massive landscape to adorn the promenade room of his hotel estate. Michel claimed to have suggested Jean for this commission, and the Duke promised to pay upwards of 5,000 livres for the right piece. Jean shook Michel's hand with a huge smile on his face and left the gallery with a completely different attitude as he arrived. For the next 2 months, John worked non-stop on this enormous floor-length landscape, capturing all the beauty and every magnificent detail of the French countryside. During these months, John lost himself to this work, prioritizing painting over sleep, food, and even water. He dedicated himself so greatly to this job because in his mind, this was the one which would earn him a spot among the best artists in Paris. This commission would prove he was good enough to paint for royalty and bring him out of poverty to exist alongside the upper class. John fantasized about what his new life would be like and imagined what he could do with all the money. He could repay his parents, perhaps even put them in a new home with a warm fireplace and all kinds of delicious food on the table. He would paint them a beautiful family portrait to hang just above the mantel and show them how much he cared. Things were going to change after this job, and that thought alone gave John the energy he needed to finish his work. After 63 long days and nights of relentless painting, the monstrous landscape was finally complete. John stood in front of his grand accomplishment and felt as if he had been transported to another world. Never had he felt so proud of his work, and was sure that this piece would bring life to any room or space it occupied. The day soon came to frame this painting, and 2 men from Michel's gallery arrived to pick it up. They loaded the canvas onto a wagon and carted it off to the gallery. John soon followed to discuss with Michel about his grand commission. When he eventually got to the gallery, John was met with terrible news.
Look, Jean, I know it hurts to lose a big job, but what can I do?
John snapped back angrily.
What can you do? You can fight for your artists and get them what they are owed.
He's a joke, Jean! I can't tell him what to do or how to spend his money!
According to Michel, the Duke of Noailles had agreed to purchase a landscape from a different artist, a more established painter with ties to the royal family. Distraught and overcome with disbelief, John sat down on the nearest chair and sunk slowly into it.
Okay, I know you have been working for a long time on this piece. Let me pay you for your troubles.
Michel offered as if he was doing Jean a favor. How much?
I will give you 300 livres.
A blank expression made its way over Jean's bony face as he quickly lost the will to fight, argue, or do anything else. He just sat there, vacant, and lost to the fact that he was completely powerless. Michel interpreted his silence as acceptance of the not-so-generous offer and hastily bagged up the money for him. The large, glorious landscape canvas was wheeled off and put into storage where Michel would certainly sell it for a premium price. Once again, cold and empty, Jean laid on the floor of his home and stared at the cracked ceiling. He could feel his bones pressing lightly against the wooden floor and the scraggly overgrown hair sitting gently on his face. He looked over to see the velvet pouch laying on the floor beside him and reached inside to pull out the jar.
Use it on the one you hate most, and the rest will be history.
John wasn't sure about how to use this demon blood, but he certainly knew who the recipient would be. Winter soon came, and this year was a cold one. John did not paint. In fact, he was unable to do much of anything besides stoop in his own sorrows and try to keep warm. The drive to succeed was gone. The motivation to work was not there, and the incentive to stay alive was slowly dwindling. He spent most of his time at home, looking out the window and pondering how the world turned the way it did. Why was society ordered in this peculiar way, he asked. Are our destinies sealed at birth, or is there any such hope that we can become more? Once again, John was reminded of his family. He thought of his parents and wondered how they fared during this particularly freezing winter. One day, he need not wonder anymore. A knock at John's door awoke him from slumber and startled him, as visitors were beyond a rare occurrence. At the door stood a priest with a message for Jean. His local parish in Camaillet had drafted a letter informing him of both of his parents passing. This cold winter had taken an unusually high toll of local residents from Camaillet, with Jean's mother and father unfortunately being two of them. Monsieur le Curé Noel, who had known Jean since a child, wrote the letter with love and signed it accordingly. Upon reading this message, Jean broke down into tears and wept in the arms of the priest at his door. Although he did not know this man, the man knew him, as he was well acquainted with the spirit of grief and sorrow. For days, Jean did nothing but cry. He sobbed for his mother, his father, and blamed himself for not being there to look after them. Unable to eat, sleep, or think of anything else, Jean's mind became awash in sadness, loathing, anger, and confusion. Before long, these emotions converged to become one, indistinguishable from one another, creating a kind of madness tailor-made to Jean's already damaged disposition. He stayed awake all throughout the night, unsure about the many things in his life. But even though uncertainty clouded his future, one thing was unmistakable. Fear no longer plagued his thoughts. Every terrible thing which could have been done to him had already happened. What more could be taken, stolen, or deceived? Liberated from worry, Jean wanted only to do one thing in this moment: paint. He climbed to the disheveled rooftop of his building, carrying brush, paints, canvas, and the velvet pouch. On the roof, he laid out the canvas and placed a series of dark oil paints on his palette, before picking up a little shard of slate tile from the roof itself. With the sharp tile, he cut his hand and dripped blood all over the dark paints. With the other hand, he opened the jar of demon blood and spilt it upon his palette, creating a concoction of mystical colors to bless the canvas with. Although the freezing wind blew, Jean felt no pain and focused only on the task at hand. Looking up at the dark night sky, a perfect model presented itself for him to paint. A beautiful winged beast with the head of a goat, body of a woman, and arms of a man. One pointing up and the other pointing down. In a frenzy, Jean worked, his hands moving themselves with maniacal precision. Like a shark feasting on a whale carcass, he acted without thought, blind to his own ferocity and moving purely on instinct. Possessed he was, but destiny cared not for the methods which maintained its course. Only the outcomes mattered. The next day, Jean awoke to find himself on the floor of his living room, with blood on his clothes and a bandage around his hand. Unsure of the events which took place in the previous night, amnesia overtook his thoughts. He remembered painting, but not exactly what he painted. Before memory served him, the answer peered directly at Jean from across the room. In the corner, sitting on an easel, was a frightening portrait of some cosmic entity, seemingly demonic in nature, yet somehow not, and oddly inviting at the same time. Jean stepped towards his curious creation and felt its power the closer he got. The aura of this magnificent creature somehow radiated off the canvas, and the piece felt as if it had a life of its own. Jean stared at it intensely, and it stared back. The appearance of the subject was alarming, but something about it made Jean feel safe, as if this terrifying thing were here to serve him and would never betray him. And Jean knew exactly who needed to experience it. But the piece could not be presented like this. Oh no, it was too disturbing. It needed to be disguised. So, Jean painted over the entire canvas with a fresh coat of white and started again. This time, he made his subject the exact opposite of what lay hidden beneath the surface. An angelic being, beautiful and soft, descending peacefully from the heavens, with clouds unfurling from both sides. She stood tall and proud, bearing hope and promise through her undying faith. Although the true subject of this portrait could not be seen, its power could be felt. And that was all Jean needed to formulate his exit plan. The following morning, he arrived at Michel's gallery after months of withdrawal. Having almost forgotten of Jean's existence, Michel lit up with surprise upon seeing his favorite cash cow artist.
Jean, what a pleasant surprise! You look, terrible.
Jean simply smirked and said, "Yes, I have taken some time off work, but I have come today with something special for you." He unclothed the canvas to reveal his painting, and Michel's face told Jean everything he needed to know.
Oh my goodness! Jean, this is magnifique!
And no, I put my whole heart into this one, so it has to be great. Michel's wide eyes never left the painting, and Jean could tell he wasn't even listening.
Well, don't worry. I'm absolutely sure we will find a great buyer for it and get you a good price, huh? Just leave it here
That's not going to work for me, Michel. I have come to sell it to you. Outright. Shocked, but also pleasantly surprised, Michel said,
Okay, that can work. I will give you 500 livres for it.
"Sorry, Michel. The price I am looking for is 10,000.
10,000? Are you crazy? No one will pay 10,000 for that.
Remaining calm and collected, John simply replied, "Okay, if you want it today, you will pay 10,000. If not, I'm walking out, and every day that passes, the price will go up by 1,000. With a face red like the devil, Michel exploded at John.
How dare you! Get out now and never come back! We are finished!
Jean wrapped up his painting and put it back under his arm. He walked out of the gallery knowing that this was not the last time he would see Michel. In the days following, Jean relaxed at home in an extremely cheerful mood. He gazed night and day upon his prized creation and thought joyously about the torment it must have been causing Michel. He could tell by the way Michel fixated on the portrait that he could feel its immense power and was undoubtedly under its spell. Michel had to have the painting, but could not bear to part with his precious money for it. So instead, he told himself that he didn't need it. But John knew he would soon crack, and with each passing day, more money was added to its price. Finally, after 13 days of silence, Michel made an appearance at John's home.
Okay, you win, Jean. I will buy the painting.
Very good. Have you brought money? Michel reached into his bag and pulled out a pouch of gold coins.
10,000 livres, just as you asked.
No, Michel. 10,000 livres was the original price. It's been 13 days. The new price is 23,000. With a fiery scorn, Michel replied,
23,000 is insane, Jean! Have you lost your mind? I will give you 15, final offer.
No, the price is 23. Buy it now, or the sale is off.
You are ridiculous!
Slowly closing the door, John said, Fine, the painting is no longer for sale.
Wait! Oh, all right. I will buy it.
Curiously, Michel pulled out another pouch holding an extra 13,000 livres. After handing it over, John went to fetch the painting and presented it to him at the door. Upon first gaze, Michel's expression was flooded with relief and reassurance. He shot John a quick and frantic smile before fiendishly scurrying off into the street like a hungry rat. John shed a small tear, knowing that was the last time he would ever see his guardian angel again. Without delay, John packed up all of his things and prepared to move back to his humble home village of Camaillet. He would leave this despicable city never to return, and that fact brought him immense comfort. This time, for the journey home, he traveled by horse and carriage, the same way a rich man would, and his feet could never thank him enough. Back at his family home, the emptiness echoed louder than John could have ever anticipated. He felt a melancholic sense of calm, which never would have entered his mind in Paris. And although the vacant dwelling was sad, John felt as if this was exactly where he needed to be. The following chapter of his life was unlike anything which came previously. Anxiety and nervousness seemed to dissipate altogether, but depression grew strong in the wake of his parents' absence. John soon met a woman and fell in love, something he had never done before, and for once, had someone else to enjoy this all-too-short existence with. John felt as though he were making up for lost time due to his pursuits in Paris, but felt it necessary to move on and relish the beautiful things life had to offer. In time, his grief and loneliness dissolved as well, for the loss of Jean's parents only made way for a new kind of family, one he thanked God for every single day. Times in France soon became turbulent, but with the money Jean had acquired from Michel, he was able to weather the storm and look after his family throughout. During this time, the French estate system began to fail. The clergy and noble class, who held all of the political power and paid almost nothing in taxes, ran up in extreme national debt from lavish spending and funding costly wars in Europe and abroad. Wealth inequality was at an all-time high, and from where he was standing, Jean was happy to watch the upper class crumble from a safe distance. Before the drama reached its peak, Jean had heard that Michel had his art collection seized after accruing a massive debt in attempts to cozy up with high-ranking nobles. It seemed that his spiral of spending had only gotten worse after Jean was able to squeeze 23,000 livres out of him for the special portrait. He supposed that the painting had finished its job and moved on to wreak havoc somewhere else. As social outrage and political violence ramped up, the monarchy's spending had somehow gotten worse, with the royal court at Versailles throwing away millions each year on special items, parties, banquets, and operas, all at a time where the average French citizen struggled to find a job or afford a small plate of food to feed themselves. Although John never said it out loud, he thought it frequently and wondered if his little painting had anything to do with all this. Eventually, the breaking point was reached and the monarchy was completely overthrown. King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette were tried and publicly executed before their properties, financial assets, jewelry, and art collections were seized by the revolutionary government. John left the past in the past and never spoke of his time in Paris to anyone he knew now. He continued to paint, but not for anyone other than himself. His children grew up. He and his wife grew old, and eventually he died in the same house his parents did. Although his wildest dreams never came true, even wilder ones did, and on the day he passed away, from the comfort of his warm bed, Jean had no regrets. One of those dreams was currently on a boat, wrapped tightly in a cloth tarp, pressed softly against a layer of hay, and encased in a strong wooden crate. For this dream was not yet over, even though the dreamer was no longer here, because this dream was headed for America. Thank you kindly for tuning in and making it through the whole story. If you like what you heard and you want to support independent creators like me, subscribe, comment, like, give this podcast a positive review, and share it with fellow lovers of dark fiction. I want to give a special thank you to Benn Cordey for voicing Claude Antoine Boucher, Shaun Gullette for voicing the wealthy banker, Tobias Frost for voicing the mysterious traveler, and Shea Salvi for voicing Michel Dupont. If you really want to show your support, become a patron to be a producer of the show and gain early access to episodes, or join the Discord to obtain secret information. Either way, I'll see you in the next episode, where we dissolve the boundaries of sound and fiction.